Let's rank Metallica albums. I'm going to sit back and get comfortable for this. I am a huge Metallica fan, probably one of my favorite bands ever. This is an interesting tier list too because you could almost Metallica has gone through phases, man. There's the '80s thrash phase, then there's kind of like the '90s phase, and then there's like the today phase with Saint Anger somewhere in there, and Lulu's on here, by the way. So what we're going to be ranking are the studio albums by Metallica, none of the live albums. So if I'm not mistaken, S&M is not on here. On this particular tier list, they did include Lulu. Personally, I probably would have left that off because that's technically a collaboration with Lou Reed, but it's there nonetheless. So I figure what we'll do is we'll go in chronological order, starting with Kill 'Em All and ending with 72 Seasons. So it's pretty self-explanatory. I mean, the best of the best will be at the top. The duds will be at the bottom. D for duds. All right, Kill 'Em All. Let's put this. I'm gonna put this as an A tier album, right here. I love this album. I think, it launched Metallica into thrash metal history, and I think I wouldn't put it quite as their best stuff because some of the I'm not a huge fan of all the vocals, and I don't think I think what I'm doing is I know where Metallica went after this, and that's like to me prime Metallica. So when you compare this to the next few albums, I don't think it really holds up to those if we're just comparing them. So with that said, that's why I'm putting Ride the Lightning at the tippy tippy top. I love this album. Actually, if you really think about it, progressively, Metallica had such a leap from Kill 'Em All to Ride the Lightning. If they tightened their sound up, the production was better. I think James Hetfield was in his prime at this point. Everything came together on this album, even the drum work. I mean, everything on Ride the Lightning is basically just taking Kill 'Em All to the next level. And I mean, there's some killer tracks on Ride the Lightning too. Then, of course, they had the controversial first ballad, which is just funny to think. Obviously, I was way too young. I'm a young man, way too young to remember any sort of controversy around Fade to Black. But as I understand it, metalheads don't like when acoustic guitars show up on their albums, which is too bad because Fade to Black is a great song. All right, moving on. I mean, this one's pretty obvious where this is going. Let's just stick that right here. In fact, we'll put these in order. I can't do it now? I can't move it once I've stuck it there? How come I can move Kill 'Em All? Oh no, I wanted to put Master of Puppets ahead of Ride the Lightning, but now it's stuck there. Okay, so we're not going to do that. We're just going to leave Master of Puppets right there. This is the quintessential Metallica album. Even like the album artwork, it's like one of my favorites. These two, honestly, Ride the Lightning and Master of Puppets are probably my two favorite album covers by Metallica. And this album, from beginning to end, just shreds. It's powerful. Every song is awesome. It's what you think Metallica should sound like every time you think of Metallica. So that's going there. What's next? Justice for All. This is an interesting one because I know a lot of fans. Some people will say this is the best Metallica album ever, and at one point I would have agreed with them. I used to play this album. This is one of those, when you had CDs. This is one of the few CDs I actually wore out. It takes a lot to wear out a CD. I wore out my Justice for All album sometime, between high school and college. This was my favorite Metallica album at one point. This one, it just seems to be the most, I don't know, hard-hitting, angry, at the time, raw Metallica album where they were just letting it all out, just letting it loose, man, just letting it hang out. And the problem now, looking back at their entire catalog, This one of the first their first four albums, this one was probably mixed the worst. I mean, we all know there's no bass on it. And having said that, though, the guitar tones are probably some of their best, but there's no bass on it, and it does sometimes sound a little tinny because of that. So I'm gonna leave this here as an A, but if I see it's gonna let me do that here. It'll let me put it here. This is like my favorite A one now. It's still not letting me move these, but that's okay because Ride Lightning's awesome too. Okay, moving on. We are at the Black Album. This is the not just the album for Metallica. I feel like the album for heavy metal music that just launched it into the mainstream. That for Enter Sandman alone, their sound was completely different, but it's so hard to deny how influential and how badass this album really is. Honestly, every song on this album I think is great. You get kind of sick of hearing Enter Sandman or Nothing Else Matters on the radio all the time. But aside from those two that you've heard constantly over and over again, the rest of the album crushes. Sad But True, Wherever I May Roam. So this one, I have to put this as the top-notch Metallica album. Behind the other two, but still up there. All right, let's go to Load. This is where things get interesting for Metallica now. I might screw up the chronological order when we get later on because I don't even remember. I think Lulu came out after Death Magnetic. I can't remember, but anyway, we're not there yet. Let's go to Load. I've had a weird relationship with Load. It's strange. It's like times in my life when things change that I have a different opinion with this album, and there was even a point where I would have said Reload was better than Load. That's not the case anymore, at least currently. Again, this is a funny list to go through too because I feel like I'll have a different order a year from now, right? Because I know a year ago I would have ordered these differently already. But having said all that, Load has a lot of good stuff on it that I think gets overlooked. And I really like the mixing quality this time of Metallica. Basically, everything from Black Album through Garage Inc. is mixed really well. They sound great. And, there's less attitude on this album than anything prior. And some of the songs are lackluster. I mean, and it starts to get twangy on this album. But I don't think it completely sucks. So I'm going to put this here as a B tier. I actually recently watched a YouTube documentary on Reload specifically. And it was interesting. I had always known that this was originally intended to be one huge album, the Load album, and they opted not to do that and break it into two, and basically forced themselves to rush into making both albums, especially Reload. And there's some belief that if they had spent more time fleshing out the ideas on each album, something better could have come of them. Or if they had just, obviously you always hear people say, if they had just combined the album into, pick the 12 best tracks, work harder on those, refine them, and just make one album out of it, then that would have been a pretty decent album as well. Yeah, I think though that I do think that they did have enough material to potentially have made two good albums here. And it makes a lot of sense when you see the behind the scenes that they rushed both albums so much to get these things out that they just didn't flesh out the ideas enough, I think. Having said that, I don't like Reload as much as Load. So I couldn't possibly, if I were to put it on the B tier, I'd have to put it to the right of Load. I don't even think it's a B tier album for them. I think I'm gonna put this as a C. Okay, where are we? Garage Inc. Dude, okay. I like Garage Inc. Um, and here's why I like Garage Inc. I mentioned it earlier. When they came out with Load and Reload, a lot of the attitude was lost. And I think they regained that with Garage Inc. And what's really cool about Garage Inc. Metallica plays a lot of they always have played a lot of cover songs, especially in their earlier days. And I like that they sort of paid tribute to. It's a cover album, by the way, if you don't know. All the tracks on it are covers, and some of them are really awesome. Like their version of "Die Die My Darling" is so good. And I mean, there's a bunch of them. Obviously, "Turn the Page" is cool. Their version of it. Uh, they brought a lot of attitude back. Just kind of, it felt like they were just winging it, dude. Just letting it all out there. Just letting it hang out there. And I like it. So I'm actually, this is probably going to be kind of controversial, eh? I'm actually going to put this. Oh, wait, I'm debating now. Oh, maybe I can't. I was going to put it on A, but I think I'll give it a strong B. I'll say I like it better than Load. Okay. Okay, I might change that. I'm feeling pretty good about it right now, though. Okay, what's next? I'm gonna just say that Death Magnetic was next. No, wait. What am I saying? How could I even? How could I forget? I forgot the greatest album, Saint Anger. Death Magnetic. How could I forget Saint Anger? This is without a doubt the greatest Metallica album ever written. When I say they lost their attitude in the 90s, they regained it in the 2000s. Such lyrics like frantic tick 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 tock and my lifestyle determines my death style. It doesn't get deeper than that. That's raw emotion coming from James Hetfield's heart and soul. I love the job that Bob Rock did on this album. He mixed it perfectly. Lars sounds better than he ever has. I mean, turning off the snare drum was an excellent idea. I was getting really tired of all the rock bands, the hundreds and thousands of rock bands for decades, all with their snare drum turned on. I got sick of it. And Lars has this genius idea to break the mold. And it happened on Saint Anger. So without a doubt, I mean, this is probably no surprise to anybody. This is the best Metallica album ever made. It should be to the left of Ride the Lightning. Is Ride the Lightning the reason I can't move anything? Easily a classic Metallica album at the top. It would be to the left of Ride the Lightning if this would work properly. And I mean, my life has been changed ever since then. Ever since the first time I heard Purify, which is probably the greatest Metallica song. Purify, You and I. Okay, let's go into Death Magnetic now. I mean, you can't go up from there. You can't go up from Saint Anger. But they did try to go up from Saint Anger years later. There was a little bit of a hiatus, and Death Magnetic came out. I actually remember when Death Magnetic came out, man. Metallica had gone so long. Lulu must have come out after Death Magnetic because there was such a gap between. I remember there being a long gap before Death Magnetic came out, and people were so eager to get Metallica music that like live tracks of were leaking out on the internet of songs that they were going to potentially put on the next album, and there was so much excitement around it. And I gotta tell you, Death Magnetic really, I think, is musically a good album. There's a lot of good stuff on there. Even That Was Just Your Life, the way the album kicks off is solid. My Apocalypse is the last track on the album, and that's probably one of the better ones as well. They kind of went back to the roots a little bit. You hear a lot of the thrash comes back. My biggest problem with this album is that it sounds like it sounds like crap. It actually If you're listening to it in headphones, it actually sounds worse. It makes my ears sting because it's mixed so poorly. You know, funny thing, actually, this album was mixed so poorly. It was clipping the whole time. It's just too damn loud. And I remember one of those video games. It was Guitar Hero or Rocks whatever. It was Guitar Hero. They had to remix the album because it sounded like crap on the TV when you were playing the video game. So the Guitar Hero people remixed the album, or I should say remastered it. And I remember there being an online petition for people were trying to get the Guitar Hero version of Death Magnetic released. So I can't. It's not gonna make it to the A tier, but well I'll give this a B tier, but I'll probably stick it at the end of the B tier. Okay, Lulu. I don't want to talk about Lulu. Lulu sucks. Lulu sucks, dude. I don't care. I've read so many interviews with every person in the band about, sticking up for that album. Even Lars going as far as to say it's going to age well and people will look back on it differently. I don't know. It's been 12 years since that album came out. Still sucks. So there's not much to say about it. I don't even really know what they were trying to do. I think what they were trying to do was Lou Reed had a bunch of like spoken word poetry, and I guess they had this idea that Metallica would attempt to write music behind it. It just sounds terrible. There's very little rhythm. None of the poetry, like, I don't know, it doesn't like, not that it matters if it rhymes or not. It just doesn't sound like poetry. It just sounds like Lou Reed talking and Metallica making a mess in the background. I don't know. Not for me. Look, if you like Lulu, good for you. All right, let's do... I feel like something's missing here. Hardwired to self-destruct. No, they're all here. Hardwired to self-destruct is a very mediocre album. There's good things on here. There's some stuff on here that's really meh to me. I have a buddy of mine has a funny opinion actually about one of the tracks on here, and it's "Spit Out the Bone." "Spit Out the Bone" is the final track on the album. It is easily not just the best song on the album, probably the best song Metallica has written in decades. Like, probably better than anything, probably since the Black Album. You know? "Spit Out the Bone" is that good. I think that highly of that song. But my buddy, it bothers him that song is that good because, of his opinion, they could have been doing that the whole time. They could have been writing songs like "Spit Out the Bone" the whole time. But instead, we got Lulu. So, but, it's a good album. I don't think it's great. I think there's a lot of stuff in the middle. The middle tracks I get lost a lot, where it's like, and some of the songs I liked at one point, "Moth into Flame" I think is one of them, where I liked it at one point, and then I kind of like grew out of it. It just, I don't know, gets kind of a little redundant. So I think with that said, I'm going to put it in the C tier, but is it to the left or the right of Reload? I'm going to put it to the right. Okay. 72 Seasons is an interesting one because it's the newest one, and I feel like with this particular album, I was really happy to hear certain things on this one. One, I think it's the best mixed new Metallica album. Like, just from a pure sound standpoint, I like the way this album sounds. The guitars, the tone is great. James Hetfield sounds younger or something. I don't know. He sounds like James Hetfield again. This is probably, of the new 3 albums, let's count, Hardwired, Death Magnetic, and 72 Seasons. I think he sounds the best on this one. There's no ballads on this album. It's not as dynamic as Death Magnetic or Hardwired to Self-Destruct. There are less... This is interesting, actually. There are less highs and less lows on this album. This is a more leveled album from start to finish. But it's like a good leveled, in my opinion, where they're not trying to do anything out of... How do I word this? They're not trying to do too much, and at no point do I think they ever did too little. They kind of just found a rhythm here and went with it, and I actually like that a lot. I like that this whole album from the beginning to end just feels like they're just out there to rock again. They're not trying to do anything. They just released an album. As simple as that. I actually like the artwork on this one too. I think the colors are cool. I really like the yellow. I mean, look at their albums. Look at the color schemes. None of them, other than maybe Reload, are yellow like that. I mean, it's just a bright, it's a bright album. I think it looks good. Having said all that, I actually think this is my favorite of the new three. And I don't think a lot of people will say that, but I'm going to put this again on the B. And I think I'm going to put it to the left of Load. And that's it. That's the Metallica tier list. Of course, the only mistake here is that Saint Anger should be in the number 1 spot. I can't move anything up here. But that should come of no surprise to anybody that Saint Anger is the greatest Metallica album ever produced. And that's it. So let me know in the comments what you think about my tier list here. And where would you put some of these albums? Would you put Lulu at the top? Or would you have the audacity to put Saint Anger at the bottom? I want to know. Let me know in the comments. Thanks for tuning in.